Local productions on QTV are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello everybody, I'm Junia Doan, and this is Uncommon Sense. Today's program is one of a series of 3 on new companies. The Entrepreneur Exposition, heading for the big leagues, was held at Dow Diamond recently. People have such ability to innovate, to make things better, as you will see in the following programs. You too can innovate. Look around your life and invent something, and thank you for tuning in. Hello, Sachin Shah, and welcome to Uncommon Sense. Tell me about your wonderful company, Phasic.
Thanks for having me here. So Phasic is a life sciences startup company based out of Plymouth, Michigan, and it was spun out of the University of Michigan in 2012. The founders were a professor, or are a professor and his grad student, and I was pretty much the third person to join the team late last year. The company makes little protein kits for the purposes of diagnosing human disease.
And how would you use this kit? Or who would use this kit?
So ideally a lab in a hospital or in a medical center would take one of our kits and put either human blood or urine or spinal fluid into the kit, and based on the proteins of interest that it's trying to detect, they can see if there's a signal of yes or no if the protein is there or not.
And the protein will tell them something about the disease and condition?
That is absolutely correct.
I see. And why is this an appealing test versus what's on the market already?
So the advantage that we have is that the current technology doesn't allow for those signals to be very clean. The signals tend to crosstalk a lot, and it can make the picture very muddy. So when doctors are trying to interpret the test results, they're not quite sure if it's a true positive test or a false positive test. True positive means that there is something there and that the test is registered, and a false positive is when nothing is there, but the test still registered positive. So it becomes very difficult for a doctor or somebody making a clinical decision to say you have this disease or you don't. So what our test does is remove the possibility of false positives and false negatives. So
is this something the doctor can do in his office, or if he had a lab, or is this a send out to some place who then uses the kit?
It's being developed right now as a send out. So the lab, a specialty lab, would have to run it, and specifically, we're actually looking at just for researchers to use it at this time. So ideally, a doctor would be able to do that at the bedside, but having been a doctor myself, we usually sent this type of thing to a lab as it was, and let the lab technicians run that type of test.
When you were a physician and a practicing physician, did you yearn for this kind of a test? Did you use others that made it problematic?
There are definitely problems out there, and I certainly recall getting a lot of these tests back and wondering what it was we were looking at and what it was we were treating, because a lot of patients unfortunately have to live in the gray world of clinical decision making. So I'm excited by this because it can remove a lot of that gray and make the lines a lot more black and white for people.
How did you get from being a practicing physician to a researcher to now in a small company?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks for asking. So I've always been fascinated by the human body and medicine, and I thought medicine would be my calling. I'd be, treating patients at the bedside and saving lives. And I did do that for about 7.5 years. I went to med school, I trained, and I practiced in the Boston area. I had a calling a few years ago to come out to Michigan because I wanted to advance my training and enter the world of pediatric critical care medicine. So I had a great opportunity to go to the University of Michigan Medical Center and meet a wonderful group of talented people. But about a year in, I think maybe the writing was on the wall for me as far as where my energies were best focused. I had to take a long, hard look in the mirror and think about the last decade of my life, really, and ask if it was something I could keep waking up every day and doing and be truly satisfied and happy. And as wonderful as it is to be a doctor and have that privilege, I think this is, I think there's more to be done, at least in terms of what I can provide to the world.
Did you have a sense of ill-at-easeness? That's why you asked that question of yourself?
I did. It's funny you mentioned that. I would wake up asking myself, am I ready to do this again today? And it's very difficult, especially in critical care, because children are dying every day. And it's I tried to think 5, 10, 30 years out, and I couldn't. I just couldn't see it happening. As wonderful as it is to do that, I just couldn't.
It was the grief part, or it was the frustration part?
It was a little bit of both. I would actually say more the frustration than the grief. The grief is always going to come, regardless. But the frustration of, working. I think it's difficult as a doctor, especially in today's age, working in a system where you know that there are wonderful technologies out there, but bringing them to the clinic is very difficult and challenging, and you don't have that luxury. So I felt that being on the other side, I might be able to push those technologies into the clinic.
And how did you get involved in the company, and what is your role?
So I had the great fortune of being in a department that allowed me to visit a lot of people on campus, and one of those folks was Dr. Shuichi Takayama, who's the CEO of this company. I knocked on his office one night, and I said, "Hey, I'm a doctor who's looking to join the next the big startup that everybody's been talking about here." And he and I talked a little bit, and I sat in on his first meeting, and I said, "You know what? I think I'd love to join your team." And he said, "Come on board. I have nothing but hopes and dreams to offer you." And I said, "That's all I'm looking for."
So what is your role, actually?
So as the VP of Clinical Development, I'm looking to develop applications for the technology. So the technology is basically a platform. It can detect proteins that are put into it, but my role is to figure out which diseases to go after and which people to collaborate with to make that happen. So Dr. Takayama and his crew are engineers and chemists by training, and I'm a physician by training, so I'm marrying the world of the lab with the world of the clinic and figuring out what tests to create next.
So I don't have a medical background, so how would you feel of the long and wide field that you could go after? What screen would you apply to your thinking that would make you look at 2 or 3 precipitative areas that sound more or could be more promising?
Mm-hmm. And the big ones are cancer, cardiovascular disease, and infectious diseases. So those are actually the 3 areas that we're thinking of going after. And there's so much even within those 3 that we could apply this test to. So what I'm hoping to do is get some cancer doctors on the phone and see what we can develop as far as a test, as well as some cardiologists, and see if we can make their tests better for them. And then maybe down the road we'll start looking at diseases, infectious diseases.
So it's not in production yet?
It is in prototype stage.
Prototype,
yeah.
Okay. So tell us the prototype and the next steps.
So the prototype is, I actually have it in my pocket right now if you're interested.
Oh, please, sure.
Sure, so it's a little plastic plate, and this was actually used in the lab just recently. So those tiny little wells, I don't know if you can see them in there,
yes,
but those all hold
9 receptacles.
Yep, that's correct. They hold 1/1000th of a liter of fluid, and that is enough for us to test proteins. And currently, the competition requires a lot more than that. So we can save samples. We can get cleaner results with less time.
So
and
it's
effort.
faster and more accurate.
Correct. And
why wouldn't people say yes immediately? Send it over. Let me try it.
It's, this is something that I thought would sell itself, and I think this is part of the challenge of entrepreneurship. There's a lot of great ideas out there, but it takes a team to really push it and develop it. I'm sure there are wonderful other options, but it's a special coalescence of people that comes together and then makes something a reality, and that's what we're working on right now.
So do you start with the University of Michigan system, employees or affiliates?
The company spun out, so we have a very strong connection with them, but we are now looking pretty much across the U.S. for candidates and people that we think can carry this company forward. But we continue to maintain a strong relationship with the university.
And they're encouraging you.
Absolutely, yeah. They're 100%, 110%, I would say. We're very open with them. We have a mentor with them. We're constantly talking to their offices.
And what about financing?
That is probably one of the other big challenges of entrepreneurship. So I am personally bootstrapping myself to make this a reality, but the company is funded on what's called a Small Business Innovation and Research Grant from the National Science Foundation.
Oh, really? That's exciting.
Yeah, and so we're at the end of the first year of that funding.
And it's 3 years, or?
It's a 1-year fund.
Oh,
So we are racing the clock, and we're going to try to get another second stage of funding coming this summer.
And when did they announce that?
The application is due at the end of July, and we'll probably hear from them at the beginning of 2015. So there's a gap that we're going to have to figure out how to make it work.
It almost seems like the government in their own research, NIH, would want to use something like this, just in parallel to what they're using.
You're absolutely right. In fact, some of the earlier interviews that the company founders had was with the folks at the NIH, and they were pretty excited by it. So now that we're at prototype stage, because it went from basically a thought to an actual device, we might.
And what's the step beyond prototype?
So after prototype, it'll be pretty much version 1.0, and we'll get that out to our first customers, and then we'll continue to improve on the product.
Oh, this is wonderful. Well, thank you very much. Stay right there.
Sure.
I just want to say a word about you and what we've learned. First of all, be true to yourself. No matter how prepared, how educated, your inside voice tells you if you're in the right field or not. Secondly, have courage to change and look around and continue on that path. And thirdly, he followed a life of, he wanted to have more of an effect. And this is possibly a way that can be more helpful than some things he was doing as a doctor earlier on. It's a wonderful test. It's a wonderful easy kit. It calls for more clarity and, I believe, faster. And we should wish him all a lot of luck. And maybe you can ask your doctors if they ever call for, what kind of a test is this called?
It's called an ELISA, E-L-I-S-A.
Yeah, ELISA. Ask them if they're using the Phasic product at the lab. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Pleasure.
I just want to hear you come back and say, listen, I have good news. And this is it. I wish you so much success.
Thank you very much.
Well, welcome, Gregory Czymbor, and I hear you have a very interesting company to share with us. You showed me some of the products, but please tell us about it.
Well, Beauty Butler is a product that makes it where you never need to dig to find your cosmetics again in a purse or through your drawer. And what it is this tray. And this tray is a very special tray that your makeup will stick to. And we have a product here, Junia, that the tray is inside this case. But what it does is the makeup comes off, and we put it on the tray, and then it will stay on there. And if you flip it over, you can see that it is on there good enough to where it won't fall off, but yet it's easy enough to come up to add and remove. Compacts, eyeshadows, you use right from the tray. It's like a palette.
Does this go in there, or those two are independent?
That's a great question. We started out selling the trays and making the trays, and this is Beauty Butler, the tray. The cover works with the tray. It goes in and out, kind of like an iPad cover. So the cover is a separate piece, so you can use it with the cover or without.
Oh, interesting. And what got you to start a company around this?
Well, that's a great question. My wife Danielle came up with Beauty Butler. It originally wasn't for cosmetics. She works in the medical field. She works in orthotics and prosthetics. And because of that profession, she worked in a lab, but she also worked in different doctors' offices and different rooms in the hospital. And because of that, she carried her tools around in this bag called a cast bag. Great to store everything, but she always found herself digging to find her different tools and supplies. Since she worked in orthotics and prosthetics, she had access to plastics and she had access to hook and loop. Many people know it as Velcro. She created these trays just like that there. She coated the plastic with Velcro, and then she took her tools and her supplies, put it onto those trays, and then when she would go see a patient, rather than digging to find all of her tools, she would put all of her tools out, and she would have everything readily available. She would use the tools, take them on, put them away, and everything was there. But what's great, what she discovered through this process is since she worked in a lab, coworkers would borrow her tools and supplies from time to time. So when she would go to see a patient, once in a while a tool would be missing. But after she created these trays, she realized, you have my mascara here. She realized when her tools were missing before she went to see the patient, and that's where.
So no amount of impact in a bag will dislodge it?
Well, within reason, yeah. It's Velcro compatible, so that it's within reason. But generally, the cosmetics stay on the tray. But the connection was made when I made a big mistake. What happened? What happened is we were going to a party, and we sometimes run late. So I encouraged Danielle, let's get going, let's get ready in the car. So she threw her makeup into her purse. On the way, she's getting ready, and she said, "Greg, I forgot my mascara." And this is where the mistake happened. I looked over and I said, "Sweetie, you look fine.
Yeah.
Let's just get to the party. We don't have time to stop." She's like, "No, I'd like to stop." Well, the party was a special party. Jenny McCarthy was there, so she gets her picture taken with Jenny McCarthy and all these celebrities, and she's not wearing her mascara.
Oh.
And for her eyes are important. And I had no idea what I'd done. I didn't realize that it was about her looking great. She always looks great, but it was how she felt. So she felt that she didn't feel confident, and that's where the mistake was made. So anybody who, if you forget your mascara, stop for your wife.
Yeah.
Or get her Beauty Butler, because when the mascara is missing, when she's in a hurry, she'll remember.
And then how did you come around, or she come around to decide to transfer this concept to women's purses?
Oh, that's a good question. So then, because she was a little stressed out that evening, she didn't feel all put together, when she went back to work a couple weeks later, she says, "Oh, if I put these tool trays together, I make them for my cosmetics, I'll never forget my mascara again." And then she did that. She made them that day. And she always remembers her mascara and everything else. So she made 3 trays, and she used them for a couple of years. And then what happened is, as she would use them getting ready with friends, or people would see her getting ready or using it in a public restroom, she would get comments all the time, "Where did you get that?" And that's how it got started.
And then how do you finance this? How do you sell it? I mean, this is like throwing yourself into a very saturated market, isn't it?
Well, it's saturated in some regard. I'll answer it 2 ways. The financing, everything, we're bootstrapping. We're doing it on our own. So that's been a challenge. It's like any business, though. No venture, or no risk, no reward. So we've been doing that. We work hard to make that happen. And then the second thing is the market is saturated. Yes, it's saturated with makeup bags and ways to store cosmetics, but there really hasn't been anything, if you really look on the market, and you probably know this if you use cosmetics, is there's no way to keep cosmetics organized. You can get that carousel or that drawer system that will sit in your vanity at home, but the moment you go on vacation or you got to get ready on the go, you're not throwing those drawers into your purse. And whereas what happens is, if you throw 3 or 4 of these into those same drawers or into that case, if you want to get ready on the go, you can look at your cosmetics, throw them in your handbag or throw them into a bag, and it's portable. So that's the big difference.
I see. And how did you decide on the size?
The size, well, some because of manufacturing restraints, and other for one reason. The size of the loop, the material that's on there, is limiting. We could only get a certain size as far as the width, so that limited us. We wanted it a little bit wider, but the size we made, that's pretty much the size that she made her original ones. She used it for many years, and it was portable, and she was able to do it. And then she made a smaller size. That this is the Flirt. It's the small one, and then the larger one is the Diva. And the she made this because when she wanted to have one in her clutch or in a smaller
Yes, I
handbag.
know.
Yeah.
What are their evening purses? Yes, always an issue. How did you I don't mean find your manufacturer who makes so few of them?
Well, good question. We started out, they didn't look as beautiful as they do now. Our first version that we made, we used basic plastic, and then we found the material to put on top of here, and then we did it manually out of the garage, like you hear many
You're a
people
good
do.
husband.
Oh, thanks. That's what a lot of people say. It's a lot of work. So that's what we did. And then we went from there, we sold those. We found that there is a demand, and we learned a lot from that experiment. And that allowed us to move forward with the production of these. These are injection molded, which basically means we were able to make the shape that we wanted. So we were able to make it more aesthetically pleasing, and we were able to make it in colors. So we have the pink, the one that you're holding there, Junia, and then in black. And then we made it round. It feels good in the hand.
It does.
Yeah, so then and that's
And
important.
how do you market it? I mean, probably a website, but how do you get going on it?
Well, we started selling to friends and family, and and doing it the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
But then, but we needed to reach out further. So then we built a website, and then we started reaching out to different bloggers and different people that are interested in makeup. And makeup organization is a highly searched term on the internet too. So people stumble upon us, and that's how we really got started, and that's what we're continuing on now. We're working on optimizing that traffic and getting more, because this is a problem that most makeup users face, is makeup organization. And what we've also found is if they're looking for a makeup bag or a makeup case, they would consider a Beauty Butler, because this stores makeup and organizes it just like a case would. So we have some other, so those are our competitors, like what you're alluding to.
What I like
earlier.
is that most things, they puddle. If you put them in a Ziploc bag or just your purse, there's a puddle of volume, and this keeps it sort of straight and narrow. It may be too deep, but
You make a good point. These don't take up as much space as a bag. So I'll pull this one off of here, Junia, so you can see. This doesn't take up a ton of space. If you were to throw this in a little bag, you're exactly right. And then the other thing that I didn't mention earlier is when the makeup is on the tray, it's protected from
accessible.
banging into each other. So it's in a bag. It's tumbling around in a bag, and the tumbling in the bag
do you
tends
have a separate job that you go to, or your wife that supports this? Or
My wife works full-time. I also work full-time. So yeah, this takes a bit of our time, but it's I have flexibility with my work, so that's what allows me to do a few more
What have you learned about
events.
working with your wife on a project like this?
My wife is awesome, and it's easy. She is fantastic as far as a workmate and as a partner. So it's very easy to work with her. The biggest challenge for me was working in cosmetics and coming to be interviewed by you today. Normally you'd want to interview Danielle, but unfortunately she's in Miami working. So there's no way that could happen. So I had to muster up the courage, if you will,
Good for you.
to work in this space. And it wasn't very comfortable at first. Guys know nothing about cosmetics.
And they don't want to.
Yeah, well said.
Illusion is very important.
Yeah, so it took me a bit to muster up the courage and actually understand a bit more about this whole arena and the challenges that makeup users face, and a lot of listening to customers and my wife. That's where my training comes from.
Did you have any background by your other job that helped you with this in marketing or any other way?
Not really in marketing, but in manufacturing. I work with printing, so everything's manufactured to order. Printing, like
Printing.
books. We make books for fundraisers, so everything's manufactured to order. So I'm very resourceful in the manufacturing end. It's nothing to do with plastics or hook and loop, but the resourcefulness is the same. So it wasn't a big challenge. And then I went to college for engineering, so talking to my friends about injection molding and learning about all of those processes and working on getting the cost down so we can afford to do this with.
How did you know what to price it at?
We didn't. We guessed, and we started selling them at a lower rate actually, and people told us we were crazy. Like, this is just, you can't sell them at this price. And had to listen to the customer, and
Right.
and we ended up bumping up the price. And actually, we're right, because when you start working in the consumer products, you might think, oh, it costs, well, just for an analogy, it costs $20 to make one of these. Well, we'll sell it for $22, and we make $2 a piece. Well, no, you got marketing costs. You have a lot more costs that you have to put on there. So the reality is the market, it's really what the market will bear, and that's what we did, is we priced it
But mostly it's through the internet.
Our sales are mostly through the internet. Yes, we did a women's expo in Detroit
good.
about a month ago, and we did a pinup festival in Miami this last weekend. So
I don't know what that is, but it's it's a women's get together.
well, pinup is a style like the 50s and 60s with the hair and the glam, you know, like the
Cute.
Marilyn Monroe thing. So there's a
Yeah.
movement towards that, and my wife is into that sort of vintage clothing and into that sort of thing. So it's a natural fit, and that's where we were able to cut our teeth, if you will, in that arena. So that.
Thank you. Excuse me for interrupting. So we've learned a really lot. First of all, this is a guy who adores his wife and who's willing to be flexible enough to encompass her interest and her, I can't say her desire, but to translate something she had affected in her professional life and do it here. And I really like that. It's very hard to work with a mate sometimes because of dominance and different capabilities and time and this and that. But he has mastered that, both of them have, of getting along. And that they sort of learned by trial how to price it, how to make it. In a sense, they were pushed into it by sort of demand of friends. And like everything else, you know, every new product solves some issue. Every new product hopefully helps something, because we're a problem-solving species, and this is one problem that's been handled for an evening purse or a clutch or a regular clutch or a regular purse.
To contact Junia, send her an email at info@juniadone.com. For more information, program schedules, and news about future guests, go to www.juniadone.com. Thanks for joining us. See you next time for Uncommon Sense with Junia Doan.
Local productions on QTV are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.